Hello and a very warm welcome to Money Control. Well, the day after the budget is always a good time to reflect and really digest all that's been presented. The first budget of the third term of the Modi government was presented yesterday amidst a lot of expectations. For now, the budget seems to be more politically focused, and of course, it's being hailed for its fiscal prudence. Having said that, it's gotten sharp reactions from across the board. To make sense of what this budget means for India, what does it mean for the third term of the Modi government, how does it take India's reform story forward? I have with me Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal from the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Thank you so much for joining us, Sanjeev. The day after is always a good time to speak about the budget. We've seen the newspapers, we've seen the reactions that have been coming in. I want to get a sense from you on what do you think is the messaging behind this budget? Because at the moment, yes, it's political because you have alliance partners, but at the moment, there have been tax tweaks for the middle class. There is an increase in the capital gains tax. So it almost seems like a lot of the stakeholders in this budget seem to be a little unhappy.
So let me first say that one very important aspect of it, which everybody just brushes under the carpet just by starting, is the fact that, you are seeing a distinct decline in the fiscal deficit, now below 5%.
Right.
Not a trivial thing. Everybody tends to think, everybody loves all the other aspects of policy making, but macroeconomic stability, until you have an inflation spike or some major blow up, people don't tend to pay attention to it. So the fact is, the macroeconomic stability trajectory is being held. That is not a trivial thing. It creates a space in future when there is another problem or shock of some sort to be able to respond. But very importantly, this is what brings down over the long term the cost of capital, the inflation rate and all these things. So this is an important thing I want to emphasize. Secondly, I know many people say, since you said political, what is it? Why is this being called political? Well, one, because there is increased spending in the Purvodaya, particularly in Bihar, and in the case of Andhra Pradesh, particularly related to the building of the capital.
Right.
Now, whatever the politics of it may be, why is this a problem? I mean, Bihar is by some margin the poorest state in this country.
Sure.
You are going to get some good infrastructure there, which I don't think anybody should object to, and there are some important tourist sites. Which perhaps should have been invested in it before, because Gaya is a major site for Hindus and Bodh Gaya for Buddhists,
right.
And surely these would benefit from good investment. So again, similarly for Andhra, I mean, they were promised a new capital. How long can they continue using somebody else's capital as their capital? So I think you can debate whether the politics enabled it or not, but as policies, they are good policies.
Okay, no, fair enough. You're absolutely right. And fiscal prudence is great, considering we live in a time where countries have spent recklessly and India has stayed conservative. But some might argue that this was the time when the government could have afforded to spend a little bit to boost consumption, and that could have had a spiraling effect on the economy that could have created jobs, inspired the private sector to invest. Is the government being too cautious at this point when it comes to keeping their fiscal really under control?
So we need to be a little careful here, because there's always a temptation of pumping demand. And this is, our economy is still growing at 7% or thereabouts. So if under these circumstances we are feeling the need to pump demand, we have to be careful. Because there will be times when we actually need to do that because growth drops dramatically. So, let's not use our powder up for this particular purpose. I would also argue that there are areas where the government is actually spending a lot more, like in capital goods, building infrastructure. I don't think we have scringed on infrastructure build-outs ever. We had some of the biggest outlays in the recent past, and we have even added to it. So I don't think it's the job of the budget under current circumstances pumping consumption, directly at least. But demand, I think we are doing a good job. The investment demand to a very large extent is coming from the government. And in fact, one of the things that we are trying to signal is that the private sector should be much more aggressive in its approach towards.
So we've seen that in the survey as well, where the chief economic advisor has categorically asked the private sector to step up. That even in the budget, it's come across that the private sector has been asked to hire interns, and the government will incentivize that. And
yes, because you see, the whole idea that there was excess capacity, all of that is now used up or depreciated away. You can't say that Indian industry is not making profits. We're seeing record profits for several years running, and stock markets are all-time highs. Some may even argue frothy. So in those circumstances, if we are not seeing sustained outlay, that there is a question, maybe cost of capital should come down, but maybe. So we are basically trying to, in a sense, incentivize a sort of expansion. Now, the PLI scheme was one way of doing it. And this is another way of doing it. We are also trying to incentivize research and development. As you know, we are creating this new National Research Fund. So we are basically trying to get another momentum going. I'm not saying that we are stepping back as government from investing in infrastructure. That will continue. But we want to be an investment-driven economy, not a consumption-driven economy. That's why I responded to your point. No, we are not trying. It's not the job of the government to try, especially under these circumstances. There may be circumstances where the economy suddenly slows down and there may be very difficult situations. That's not the case in India anyway. So, I'm not going to argue for pushing consumption. You could argue, and you can debate this issue whether tax cuts are needed for the middle class, etc. I know that's another sticking point, but that is a very different argument from saying that government should directly go and sort of instigate and spend on consumption.
Okay, so let me come to the tax cuts for the middle class. There have been tweaks in the tax structure, and the idea behind it is to give relief to the middle class. However, the middle class is, and I represent it, we feel that they could have been something more that could have happened. And is there a case for a more aggressive tax cut strategy, specifically for the middle class, considering the middle class has been left out pretty much in the last 6 budgets, and this is the only budget where we've seen some sort of tinkering that's happened?
So, look, I pay those taxes too, so I'm always in favor of lower taxes. I am unapologetically belong to simplify and lower taxes camp, always. But having said that, there are a few things. First of all, there is in the budget a clear statement that a major relook is happening of the tax laws. So while this is an announcement, so you may say that only when it comes we will discuss it. But the fact is that there is a clear enunciation of the fact that we need to simplify our taxes, and that is now going to be attempted. There are certain annoying taxes like angel tax that have actually been removed. Some slab increases and all that has also been done. Now one can debate ad nauseum whether it should have been more and so on. But the fact of the matter is, at some point, we've also got to balance the budget, and so we have done some balancing. But in the long run, I am always, as I said, in favor of a lower tax, simple tax regime. And even for multinationals, we have lowered
we've lowered taxes for foreign companies.
Well, it was 40%, so it is excessive. You want FDI to come in, you need to lower it. So you see, that's the problem. You see,
that we are paying 35%,
every argument,
30%.
Everywhere you will have an argument on the other side. People will say, "Oh, we should now be competing with China. We need to get," somebody will come and say, "What's the point of lowering income tax? What about the jobs?" So, where will the jobs come? Well, we need to encourage FDI. So, somewhere you have to do the balancing, and it's going to be an unpleasant one, whether you like it or not.
No, that's a fair point. But the middle class really, gets the raw end of the deal. We don't get decent roads beyond Delhi, Bombay. Even Delhi, Bombay is flooded currently. So,
don't be a little too unfair. I mean, the airports have dramatically improved in the last decade.
We just had a roof collapse in
No, I agree. Well, that's an unfortunate incident. But the fact of the matter is that you can't argue that our infrastructure hasn't dramatically expanded.
It has. No, that's a fair point, but
And some of it will go wrong.
But okay, so let me to take this conversation forward. Now, increasing the long-term capital gains tax, whether on short-term holdings or long-term. Again, now that's again hitting out at the investor community. The investor community is up in arms. And when I say the investor community, it includes a lot of middle class, lower middle class who are investing in mutual funds, trying to invest, saving up for their
First
kids'
of all,
education.
many of them are sitting on huge profits, and it is this government that enables that. So don't, kill the goose that laid the golden egg. And the reason that is able to happen is because of the reforms, the infrastructure, the simplification.
So barely
reforms.
a year and a half or 2 years at the most, and now the party is over.
Why?
Because
you have had the best, for the last decade, you had the best stock market run of all time. I mean, just think about where you were, a decade ago. Where was the stock market? That is difficult to think. So, lot of wealth has been generated, okay? And the middle class is certainly a beneficiary of that. The rich have also benefited. The middle class also has benefited. Now, even there, we have attempted a simplification. For example, on real estate. It's gone from 20 to 12.
Yeah.
Now, yes, indexation has been removed, but let me say that for most calculation, not for all, but for most calculations, there will be a reduction in the tax burden for doing this, and it's a simpler system. Having this indexation, then you calculate it, and so on and so forth. Well, one could argue that you can maybe instead of 12, taken it all down to 10. Well, you can do the maths. At some point, maybe that should be done if the fiscal space is there to do it. So I'm not, as I said, I am not unsympathetic to having lower taxes generally.
right.
Okay, and this is true for the corporate sector, and it's true for individuals. I'm, in the end, I'm a believer that the state has the right to 1/6 of the resources of the country, and under normal circumstances, which is what the Ramayana and most Indian texts will say. So. I'm not somebody who wants Nordic levels of tax collection at all.
We are far away from Nordic levels of service also. And it's not possible.
No, even if we did, even if we had that, I would still argue against it. So, point of the matter is, we want simplicity and we want lower taxes. But we can't go out there and suddenly begin lowering taxes. We have to take it one step at a time and balance it along the way, because we also require to maintain macroeconomic stability.
So the tax revenues have not really been revised upwards, even after the
some revision has happened. I mean,
so we did speak with Mr. Somnathan also about this, and he said the revenue that will go away because of the middle class tax tweaks is going to get compensated with this. So it turns out to be a revenue neutral move for the government, and it's dampened sentiments. So.
Well, as I said, we've got to balance the budgets. So if you tell us which of these other measures or spendings you want us to cut down, when we will cut those down.
But many are even calling it as an inheritance tax, removing away.
I mean, that is a bit too much.
Of indexation benefits
that's
from
a bit too much, because an inheritance tax will be much more on. It's only when you sell it that this would happen, and only if you're sitting on huge profits would it make a difference. After all, you've reduced it from 20 to 12. So, I mean, wasn't 20%, even with indexation, would be a higher level, by the way.
Okay, well, it's your job to defend the budget, so I completely get it. What's exciting you, about this budget in terms of the reforms and in terms of the intentions that have come through in this budget that could set the tone of governance and policy making for the next 5 years?
So I think the important thing is, repeatedly the point was made that we need to simplify the ease of doing business, but also taxes. Everybody likes arguing on taxes, but there are a whole bunch of other things. Even there, for example, excess litigation, the bar for appeals has been significantly increased. There are a whole bunch of measures there. There are also measures in there for trying to promote, for example, shipping in certain sectors. So, I think because people have got so focused on either this middle class tax thing, or on whether or not Bihar and Andhra Pradesh have got some extra money. They're not discussing almost any of the other measures in there at all. So I think there is in there an intention, and right in the beginning, the finance minister listed out a bunch of things which are the guiding principles.
Yeah.
Now, not everything will get done in this one budget.
Sure. So talking about jobs,
Yes.
I firmly believe that it's not government's job to create jobs. However, it is government's job to build an environment where jobs are created.
Absolutely.
Now, what's with this budget, the government is incentivizing the private sector to hire interns, pay them. I was never paid as an intern, by the way, so that's great that the interns will get paid. But that could be, one would argue that this might be an overly persuasive measure, getting the private sector to hire interns. Whether you have a need for interns or not is irrelevant in this case. So, I just want to get your thoughts in on this. Has this happened elsewhere in the world where the private sector has been asked to come on board?
See, the point of the matter is some sort of an apprenticeship,
Right.
learning by doing, is an important part of getting young people into the job market. Now, one can argue forever whether our education system needs to fake skilling. There's that also needs to be done. But I think the thing that we are trying to do is basically create pathways so that the private sector creates environment for learning by doing. And we are willing to subsidize it.
Got it.
I'm not saying that in itself it will create thousands, all the jobs. This is just tipping it, creating a smoother pathway, providing a certain level of support in order to create jobs for internships, apprenticeships, whatever may be the case, so that young people can get in there and begin doing things.
So this cash transfer of up to 15,000 rupees for young people who've not been able to avail any of the schemes, what is that? Is that an unemployment dole or?
No. This is basically a way of, providing some short-term. It's all about smoothening, greasing the system into the job market.
Okay.
So the idea here is basically the following: that you create an environment where jobs. By the way, jobs do exist in the private sector. It's not like they don't. In fact, Larsen and Toubro is complaining that they are unable to hire 20,000 people.
Yeah.
So there are people, there are jobs. But what we feel is that there needs to be some degree of greasing of that pathway. And whether it's in terms of internships and apprenticeships and other mechanisms of doing it, this is not the only mechanisms of doing it. There are other things that needn't be in the budget that also need to be done, whether it's the Labour Ministry has a search mechanism that needs to be improved. So, I am not making the case that this is the way to create jobs. Ultimately, the source of jobs has to be the overall economy has to grow.
Absolutely.
And that is the only way sensible jobs will get created. But those pathways can be certainly lubricated.
Okay. My last question, is 7% a good growth rate for India? Because that's what's expected this year. Eco Survey put it out. We had the Finance Secretary also say yesterday that 6.5 to 7% is what India could look at.
I think 7% is very doable, but it requires that we are at it. I mean, it's not like, once you do a bunch of reforms some years ago and then we can live off it. It's not like that. This is something we have to continuously invest into, whether it's the government's effort in terms of investing into creating a conducive environment or building infrastructure and so on, or whether it is the private sector that needs to come in there and begin to sort of develop a more aggressive investment approach and take risks. And again, we have tried to remove some of the things like angel tax that were kind of getting in the way of the creative juices, so to speak. If there are other things, we'll be happy to look at them as well.
Okay, I know I said that this question was the last one, but this final one, to go back to something that was mentioned, I think 2 budgets ago, about unleashing animal spirits. Does this budget do that according to you?
We will see. I mean, the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
I think it's taming the tiger. Well, that's my view. Well, okay, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Thank you so much for joining us on
Thank
Money
you.
Control, and we just hope that India continues to grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much.